Welcome back to the Unarmored Talk podcast, everyone. My name is Mario P. Fields. I am your host for the first time listeners and viewers. And for those who are coming back for another episode, thank you so much for supporting over all of these years. If you are the first time listener and viewers, please get on Apple, Spotify, or whatever is your favorite audio platform and check out some of the other 130 plus guests who were willing to remove their armor and talk about an emotional thing. Could be a whatever promotion in your job or anything as human beings, and how those emotions ran through their bodies, if you will, and how did they think through them to improve the situation or the outcome of that situation. And also, in closing, for my remarks, thank you guys for the 1.3 million plus views on my YouTube channel and the thousands of downloads on the audio platform. You've generated hundreds of dollars that supports my nonprofit that's still serving incorporated. Once you guys watch this episode, I would have posted a most recent check donation for about $7,000 to one of our schools this year, and another one's coming up for another $7,000 to our other schools. So thank you, everyone, for helping me make a difference in Pitt County, North Carolina. And last but not least, my heart and prayers goes out to those families impacted by this most recent catastrophic disaster. I know that prayers cannot take away those who have lost loved ones, but I will continue to pray for understanding and support as those folks, who have been impacted grieve, and then our first responders, military personnel, and leaders who are trying to make a difference and improve this humanitarian assistance and disaster relief in our own country, and that is the United States of America. If you are in the United States of America or you love this country and you're listening to this podcast, God bless everyone. All right, the remarks are done. Admin is over. Now let's get to the amazing guest. He's handsome. She's beautiful. James and Jess Ash, everyone. James is a United States Marine Corps veteran. He's also got 20 plus years as a first responder in that industry that helps people and makes a difference in communities. And then Jess, she's a physician assistant, and she has dedicated her entire life to helping people, not just in the medical field, but around the world. I'll let them get a chance to tell you guys a little bit more about themselves. Welcome to the show,
Thank you so
Jess
much, Mario.
Thank you.
James.
Great to see you.
Ash. Oh, one last thing. They are the founders and producers and hosts of their own podcast. It's Unbroken, right?
That,
Unbroken
that's right.
from
Unbroken from the ashes.
the ashes. I don't want to say the other word, everyone. Need some help there. What's up, everybody? What's
Hey,
going on, you guys?
Mario, thank you so much for having us on, man. We're honored.
No, thank you. I mean, we'll get right into the topic here in a minute, but can you both just share a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. Jesse, go ahead.
Oh, sure. Put
Ladies
me on a
first.
spot. Oh, thank you. You're so kind.
Yeah.
So, a little bit about me. Like you said, I'm a physician assistant. So I've always worked in medicine, but I've also dedicated my life to helping other people who are in need. And some of those ways have been through fundraisers. For example, I've climbed some mountains several times to go into high altitude and give myself a disease called pulmonary hypertension. You get it with altitude sickness. And when you come back down, it goes away. But my patients have this disease, and it is a progressive fatal disease. And it's a rare disease. And, it's doing these types of adventures, and I'm an adventurer at heart anyway, but doing these actually gives me the opportunity to experience the same symptoms that they have, like
Mm.
getting shorter breath tying my shoes. And in fact, I'm here with some fighter braids because, not because I'm going to fight, but because I'm leaving for Mount Everest in 36
Two
hours.
days, yeah.
And I'm gonna hike to Everest Base Camp, and I'm doing it as a fundraiser for Team Phenomenal Hope. And they paired me with a patient, and the project is called Let Me Be Your Lungs. So I'm gonna be her lungs. And she's a 21-year-old woman. who is very, very sick. And so I'll be, in essence, bringing her up the mountain with me on her behalf and doing some fundraising for her. So that's a little bit about me. And so now you,
I'm just a guy.
you're just a
I'm just a
dude.
dude. So I spent about 6 years in the Marines. My first 4 years I was over at Lejeune. I got out in '05, got recalled back in for the surge, was in Fallujah for about 9 months. Happy to be home. And since then, I've essentially been in law enforcement or working as a first responder in some capacity. I've taught firearms and defensive tactics since about 2004, and that's part of how I like to help others too. I grew up in a really violent and tumultuous home, and I like giving people claws and teeth to be able to fight back against the wolves that may visit them in their lives. So I try to give and pass on my skills to others. And I'm also an adventurer. Jess and I met training to climb Mount Rainier. And on all those training hikes, we kind of got to know each other, fell in love. And that was 8 years ago. And here we are now.
And you guys are an amazing couple and two humanitarians. I mean, first, Jess, let me be your lungs. Is that what it's called? Let me be your lungs.
Yes.
And that's personal to me. My younger brother had passed away years ago because of his lungs disease that took his lungs away, and he passed away from that. And so I applaud you for even doing that. And then for you, James, welcome home from Fallujah. That was some tough times, and you got recalled.
Yeah,
and
yeah. I was at home making pancakes. Yeah, had a nice little beard going. Got a knock on the door. FedEx lady threw me this package. Walked away before I could say thank you. I opened it up and it said, "Hey, we miss you. We can't live without you. Welcome back."
Man, and for you to just to continue to dedicate your life as a law enforcement officer and more, which brings me to the topic. You two, from my basic understanding, and even from listening to your introduction, is you've dedicated your life to helping those who need help, those who have received some news or maybe some rare disorder, some rare disease that, like, why me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But recently it hit your home, and particularly both of you in a different way. Can we talk about the news?
Yeah, man,
And now you guys are dealing with something.
for sure. So over the last year and a half, 2 years, I've been having some GI problems, and so we were doing a workup to see what was going on. Um, Multiple doctors couldn't figure it out, and they did this blood test where they look at a deep dive of my white blood cells and figure out what's going on inside there because it looked a little bit off. And the doc said, "Hey, if your white blood cells are off, that can affect your gut because your immune system's tied to your gut." And I got my labs back, and my white blood cells were all crazy. And so I was like, "Oh, cool, we figured it out. This is awesome." And so
Mhm.
Jess was out of town for work. I did a screenshot of my lab results, sent it over to her, and said, "Hey, we got it. We got it nailed down, and we got some hope. Figured out what's going on here. Now we can just move on." Well, she didn't respond back to me right away. So, Jess, what was that like for you when I sent you those labs?
So I was out of town for work and I was getting ready to go out to for a team dinner. And I
Mhm.
looked at this screenshot and I knew what it meant. Um, I knew
Wow.
that to put it in layman's terms, I knew it meant that he had some type of cancer in his bone marrow. And I wasn't sure which one it was going to end up being. Is this a lymphoma? Is this a myeloma? I didn't know that. I just knew he had cancer in his bone marrow. And I was out of town, so I didn't want to tell him that,
Mm.
over the phone. So I ended up responding and I just said, it may be more than you're thinking. And I was wrecked. And I called my boss and I said, I'm not going to dinner. I cried all evening and all the next day because I knew everything we had known as our lives was suddenly going to be entire. There's everything up to that day, and then there's everything after.
Mm.
So I waited until about a day and a half later when I got back home, and I sat him down and I explained to him what I thought it meant. But I said, maybe I'm wrong. It's not my expertise. This is not my specialty. But maybe this is something else. But we found out within a week that he had multiple myeloma. And when I was in school a million years ago, uh, the prognosis was you usually passed away within like 6 to 12 months. And there was really no good therapies back then. But since then, there have been a lot of new therapies. There's been a lot of breakthroughs, and the average life expectancy is about 5 to 6 years. Um, and that means some people live longer,
Hmm.
some people don't. And James is very young for this diagnosis because it usually affects people who are closer to 70.
Hmm.
And for whatever reason, it affected him when he was 41.
Yeah, so this cancer, it affects my bone marrow. So my immune system is now permanently compromised. And it also affects the way my bones regenerate. So all of our tissues have a natural breakdown and rebuild cycle. This tells my bones to break down faster than they rebuild. So I have about a dozen large holes through my skeletal system. The largest being in my skull. I've got about an inch and a half diameter hole in my skull,
Hmm.
and they're everywhere. And
Like hundreds of them.
yeah, so
Wow.
some is big as an inch and a half. Um, some of them small as like pinhole, but they're everywhere. And so being who I am, I kind of identified myself as I'm the warrior guy, right? I'm the guy who does the combatives. I do really hard competitive combatives classes and competitions and things like that. And my goal this year was to deadlift 600 pounds, and man, now my spine is entirely compromised. My immune system is compromised, and I kind of had about a month where I totally lost my identity.
Hmm.
And, I went into, kind of this like pit of despair for 3, 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's
And,
the right word.
and it was
Yeah,
really hard.
man, I tell you, in just when you got the pictures on your phone of the blood results, did you respond through text or did you actually call James?
I responded by text because if he
Mhm.
heard my voice, he would have known, and I wouldn't have been able to postpone telling him. And I didn't want him to be alone when he hears this news.
Yeah.
And I knew I was going to be the one to tell him the news before we even got to see a specialist doctor. So I wanted it to be in person, and that was a challenge to hold that in, but it was it was the right thing uh, to wait. So I didn't actually talk to him on the phone. I don't think until I got back home.
No,
I
you,
didn't.
you were
I
radio
avoided.
silence. Yeah. And I just thought you were busy because you go on these trips and you're slammed,
Right.
with work. So I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, so she's busy. And I was an EMT for 5 years, but I don't know how to read lab results like this. Like
Right.
that's not my, I don't know.
It,
Um,
and I love, because I would tell you, Jess, for you, I I've been married for 3,000 years, and what courage and discipline that you have. Again, everyone, you guys know I have a low budget here, so I don't have a special button. You guys know the deal on Armored
Here,
Talk
we'll help you.
here. You guys want to donate 5 cents. But for you to just be able to not call and tell him, um, remarkable. Because I know I would have been like, "Hey, babe," and then James, for you to be so positive, for you to, it's a choice. It's a choice,
it's a
and for you to
choice.
go, yeah. I mean, there's people that get news that their toenails infected, and they probably lose it, and and
Yeah.
and, and for you to go, okay. You know what? Hey, you know what? My white blood cells, they're confused. They just need some protein. They need to get in the gym, and let's get them back on track. Maybe a little drill instructor come in here, and
That's right.
for both
So,
of you to be that strong. And
well,
now here it is.
yeah, that
It,
strength wasn't, that didn't happen in the moment though.
it, and that's what I was going to bring up. I was going to
Yeah.
say, here it is. You get this devastating news. You guys had a choice, and of course, there was some turbulence. Like you said, you went before a month of despair. And at what point did you both go, let's start to remove our armor, if you will, and share our journey?
Uh, I don't know that it wasn't an acute moment. I think it kind
Hmm.
of gradually happened. Um, well,
There was probably several stages.
yeah.
One of them was revisiting spirituality,
Mm.
because
Let's
that's a
talk.
very
What do you mean by that?
um, so we were not going to a church, but we both believe in God
Hmm.
and we both believe in Jesus. And I think it's very easy when you have news like this to say, God, why me?
Right.
Why are you doing this to me? And be angry. And I we didn't do that though. I
No.
think what we did was we said no. We need to embrace spirituality more than we
Hmm.
have. We've been too lax and have allowed bad interactions with people at a church in the past, like influence our uh, lax approach to spirituality. So we started to both individually and together really start to dig in and look at like why did we fall away from this and what do we need to do to have a better relationship with Jesus. So in fact, we met with a pastor and he was shocked because he knew our story and he was expecting us to come in and be angry.
Right.
Mm.
And we're like, no, no, that's not why we're here. We're here because we want to find a better environment to, to study our faith and have this better relationship and have a better community. So that was one of the big things I think early
Hmm.
on. The other big things were taking control back. So a big part of this is James, he was this warrior. He was a warrior. And he was also kind of a leader that a lot of people looked up to. And he lost that identity. So, how do you get that identity back?
Hmm.
You have to find ways that you can control. There are things you can't, and
Hmm.
there are things that you can. And one of the things was, all right, we need to find, the best care, from a traditional medicine standpoint.
Right.
And we went, full steam ahead doing that. In fact, we live in Pittsburgh and we started getting care in Little Rock, Arkansas, of all places, because it happens to have the biggest multiple myeloma center in the world. And so we pursued all that. Simultaneously, James decided, you know what? I am going to spare no arrows in this fight.
Wow.
And so we started looking at non-traditional things. This guy started taking ice baths and he went on a,
And that's a big deal because there was about a year and a half growing up where we didn't have hot water, and so we had to take like cold showers and cold baths. I've been very averse to cold water, but the I had a rumor that this could help the mitochondrial health, and so when we started doing things like
we
getting
went
rid of all of the plastics in our house and all the things that could be toxic, and
right. We changed our diets. We no processed foods. We did keto for a while, but the most important thing is whole foods. And so now we follow pretty much a whole organic food diet. So there's no pesticides on anything. There's no chemicals in anything, and that's really hard to do.
but what happened was I think at one point I talked to somebody I work with and I said, hey, this is what's going on. I was actually pulled into my chief's office because he noticed I was down, maybe a little depressed. he pulled me into the office. He goes, "Hey, some of the guys are saying you're not acting quite the same. Are you okay? Are you good?" And I told the chief, "Hey, I think at this point, Jess had talked to me, but I hadn't seen my doctor yet. I was like, Chief, I think I got cancer." And he was wrecked. Like, and he got turned upside down. And once I was officially diagnosed, I confided in somebody else. And they're like, "Dude, I know this cancer doesn't have a cure, but if anyone can beat it, it's you." And that outside voice, that person speaking to my heart and reinvigorating that fire that was almost snuffed out from that depression, man, that I needed that. Then I told somebody else, they're like, "No cancer or no cure, screw that. You got this. You're gonna beat this. Like, you're the toughest dude I know. You're not gonna let cancer take you down. You're not gonna go down without a fight."
Right.
And so I kept getting these people speaking this life into me and this truth into me, and it reinvigorated that fire. And so, we love Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And one of the things he says in there is when everything has been taken from you, the one true thing that can never be taken from you is how you respond to the situation. And I'm paraphrasing. He's like, but you always have the opportunity to decide how you respond. And so we grabbed it by the horns and we're like, all right, we are going to decide how we do this. And far before this happened, we had a saying in our home. When we would leave for work or our kids would leave for school, most people say, "Have a great day." To us, that is very passive. Like, you could have a great day, maybe you don't, but it's very passive. So what we say is, "Make today great," because you can decide. It's up to you whether or not you're having a great day. It's all about your perspective. And so we took that and applied it to this. And we're like, you know what? We're going to do this, and we're going to make the best of this. And the one thing that stood out to me the most was, have you seen the movie Fight Club?
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember when they pull the guy out of the gas station and they hold the gun to the back of his head and they say, "What did you want to do?" And he pulled out his college ID. And he's like, "I wanted to be a vet." And the main character goes, "Well, you've got 6 weeks to be enrolled in a vet school, or I'm going to come and do X, Y, Z. Right? I've got your address, I've got your ID card. I'm going to come to get you. I'm going to come find out. I'm going to check on you. You got 6 weeks." And they let the guy go, and then the alter ego of this character is like, "Man, that was messed up. Why'd you do that?" And Tyler Durden is like, "You know what? Tomorrow his breakfast is going to taste better than ever it has before, and now he's going to do something with his life." I'm taking that approach with this. I know that my stopwatch is ticking. I know there's a limited time, but guess what? There is for every one of us. Every one of us have limited time, and tomorrow's never guaranteed. I just happened to be able to take a look up at the clock. I can see maybe that my watch is running a little faster than somebody else's.
And you have gratitude for that.
And I do, because I'm going to take that as a gift. That's a wake-up call to say, you know what? The things in life that don't matter, get rid of those things. Push those aside and embrace what you've got left and make it count.
And I think is simultaneous to this, we had a community.
Right.
We didn't even realize how many people cared about us because we're always giving to other people. Yeah. And man, people just rallied behind us. People, in fact, strangers who are hunters would bring us the deer meat they harvested because they heard that we're trying to eat, organic food. Yeah, clean organic food. And we were just blessed with so many people doing so much for us when we really needed it.
Yeah.
And because of the choice we made to embrace this and to have gratitude every day and to have purpose, we decided to start the podcast. And the reason for that was we did not know if, because of the bone disease and the chemotherapy, if James would ever be able to go back to work. We didn't, and all of his skills are centered around combatives or
They're physical things, you
yeah.
know.
And so the podcast serves several purposes. The first is it gives him a new purpose, right? It gives him, and it's something he can do,
Mhm.
no matter how, even as this thing progresses,
Right.
when it doesn't progress, but if it does, this is something he can do. Second, the purpose behind it is archiving these life lessons
Mhm.
for our sons. It we are creating this archive of those lessons that are very hard to convey to a kid, right? And we both came from really rough backgrounds. We both have lived these full lives and have all these lessons that we want to give. And now we're able to get it out there. And maybe, you know, maybe it doesn't go very far, but maybe it will. And we've started interviewing other people too who have,
Mhm.
the question is, you've gone through some terrible thing. How did you get unbroken? And that's the premise of the podcast.
And to your point, Mario, you know, we have lots of people going through that now in
Mhm.
the aftermath of this hurricane. A lot of people are getting bad news right now. And I think seeing an example of how you can handle it um, maybe could give someone some hope. And I love what you're doing with your show. You're showing that it's okay to be unarmored, it's okay to be vulnerable. And that was a really hard part about our venture too, because I've always been very private. Um, but now, man, we put it all out there. And you know what? It's so freeing.
Yeah. And James, I would have never known that you were, even when I met you at the discovery meeting, you were like, Mario, I'm super private. And I was like, man, it's natural for you. Got some God-given talents, and just everyone, listeners and viewers, you guys heard it. I mean, from reconnecting with their faith, self-reflection. They didn't have to do that. And the surprise, I just imagined the look on the pastors or priest face when he's like, "Oh, here they come." You guys like, "No, this is awesome. We just want to reinforce what is taking a
Yeah,
positive approach,
he was so
you know,
surprised, man.
to this news, and then not being rigid. The ice bath. You know, I grew up in Michigan, and I know it's cold in Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania and up north, but not being rigid, saying, "You know what, I'm going to try this." All the way to the community, being involved. Guys going out to Little Rock, Arkansas. You didn't have to do that. And I will tell you, you're making a bigger impact than you would ever imagine. You will never know. And, circumstances reveal the character of true people, and it reveals characters of folks you didn't know around you. Well, your
Hmm.
circumstance has revealed how powerful you two are as a couple, why God, I believe, brought you together 8 years ago, and in 5 years of matrimony. And while you're doing what you're doing, you're making an amazing difference for your son, family members, and folks globally that you would never know. And I applaud you both for that. I would be selfish to keep you on the show. I know Jess has to fly in like 6 minutes. I'm joking here, but and James, you're amazing. Looking back for the both of you before I let you guys go, if you could give any advice to anyone or a couple, sometimes folks go through things with family members, caretakers. What advice could you give them, or would you give them looking back?
My biggest piece of advice, and it may be what you're going to say too, but it's to seek gratitude. No matter how terrible the situation, you need to seek gratitude, or at least seek the lesson
Mm.
from the situation you're in, because there's always a lesson, and there's always something, if you look hard enough, to be grateful for. And that by itself can really change your outlook and your approach to the situation.
I would agree. I think every horrible thing that you or I have ever gone through, years later, there something became apparent that was like, oh, this was the reason I went through that. I went through
Hmm.
that because it prepared me for this,
Hmm.
or it prepared me to help this person. And I've seen it over and over again. So we don't, I guess the advice is uh, don't wallow in victimhood. Have gratitude for what you're going through. You will find a reason for it if you keep the faith.
I love it, everyone. You guys heard that. Look for some lessons. Just find something to be grateful for, no matter what the situation is. You guys are amazing. I know you will invoice me for that amazing tips, those pro tips. I will pay you guys next year. But I love you both. And everyone, if you guys have not subscribed to their podcast on YouTube and their Facebook, shame on you. Unbroken from the Ashes. That's Ashes, because Mario P. Fields will screw that up. But it's Unbroken from the Ashes. You guys are wonderful. I love both of you. And thank you so much for blessing Unarmored Talk podcast.
Thank you, Mario. Good to be
Thank you.
here.
No worries. Well, everyone, you guys know the deal. If you always watch me, you'll see this face and this voice. If you listen to me, you'll just hear the voice, but you will not see the face in a couple of weeks. But until then, I will continue to pray that God blesses you, the listener viewers, your family members, your friends, and all living beings and things around you. Until next time, take care.